My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
My name is Beef Pork Ribs. I'm a fine repository of esoteric knowledge, which I suppose most people would qualify as geeky. Though I dabble in many fandoms, my main areas of expertise are anime, movies, and Belgian comics, with a strong recent insurgency of D&D.
Our mission is to bring nerd and geek culture to the masses
by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, comics, graphic novels, TV, cartoons, animation, nerds are geeks, entertainment culture. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power. Nerds and geeks, come gather around the scene. Come and join us in the Bat Jar. Come and tune into Average Joe and his team. Lots of room here in the Bat Jar. When the newest nerdy news drops, these podcast pals put it under the scope. DC, Marvel, Disney, Star Wars, cinematic, multiverse. It's mega Christmas, strangest franchise. Hear it on the Bat Jar, Nerdy Power.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
See you now, Space Cowboy.
Oh, wow. Here we go. All right. So I would fully admit that I intended to watch more of the live action Cowboy Bebop. I think I've only seen like 2.5 episodes. So this will be more like at least for me, this is more of a first reaction to the new series and comparing what I've seen so far to the original Cowboy Bebop, which I've also not seen the entirety of.
At least one of us has seen the entirety of the original. So that's, we have a little bit of a basis for talking in comparison.
That's right. So Secret Origin segments, I don't know. I think as I got more invested into anime when I was in university, you start looking around. It's like, what are the top rated or most popular anime? And Cowboy Bebop was certainly one of the ones that stood out, particularly because it's one of the shows that people talk about as having a really good English dub.
Especially for the time it was made. Yeah, that's true.
So I think
it still, was it broccoli when it's peppers? There's like a recurring joke that they keep having to eat bell peppers, but the English dub translated it to broccoli, even though you can clearly see, like on the frying pan, there are peppers being fried up.
I think it was actually you let me borrow the DVD because you had the movie, the series on DVD, and I remember watching the first couple episodes on your DVDs.
That's very possible. I have had Cowboy Bebop is one of the earlier animes I think I got on DVD, like after Dragon Ball Z and starting to get One Piece. It's, I think, part of the second like real batch of DVDs I bought of anime ever.
But then it was announced that it was going to be put on the Funimation streaming service, and I was just like, well, I'll just watch it on there. And I, it was kind of like loaning something from the library. I felt bad about like holding on to something for a long time, so I gave you back your DVD, and then my intention was to finish it. Well, I probably watched like 3 or 4 episodes on your DVDs, and then I think I've seen about half of the episodes now.
Okay.
There's like 26 episodes. I think I've seen about 13. My problem in watching it is that it feels very melancholic as a show. It's
that is one of its defining features.
It is very introspective, and the episodes usually end on like a sad, dour note. And
well, yeah.
My point is that like it's not a show. Even though there were episodes available to watch, I'm like, okay, like I can't watch another episode of this. I need to like let this digest. And it's
just need to watch Mushroom Samba every second episode, and you're fine.
I have no idea what that means.
It's the episode. Wait, have you not seen the episode where they steal the mushrooms?
I don't know if I have. I got far enough that they introduced Edward. Like Edward was around.
Okay, yeah, that episode definitely has Ed. And
is he Ed? I can't even remember. This is very bad.
I mean, it's Françoise is her actual name.
Oh,
but if you haven't gotten far enough to meet her,
I have not. But anyway, that's all to say. I understand it's a very quality show. I've been spoiled for the ending thanks to a Watch Mojo video. It was like top 10 deaths in anime.
But it doesn't matter. Like on so many levels, I feel like the ending doesn't matter. But I don't know. That's a personal opinion slash something that people have pointed out, that like Cowboy Bebop is mostly about people whose character arc is finished. Like
Interesting.
there isn't a lot of evolution that happens in the Cowboy Bebop main cast. Even Ed, even though she's very young, still doesn't undergo that much change. And even like despite what happens at the end of the show with Spike, it's not like he's changed all that much as a person either, which
Right.
is kind of which also kind of adds to like the mood of it being kind of melancholic, because there isn't that like, oh yes, we're learning from our mistakes, we're improving, all those typical shonen things don't really apply to most of these characters.
Anyway, I never finished the anime because and the problem is so often when I'm going down to watch TV, I'm looking for something that's like a pick me up and not necessarily something that's going to kind of, bring me down.
Actively make you question morality.
Yeah, so like Cowboy Bebop's in my queue on Funimation, but I never seem to pick it. And clearly you have a very different experience than I do.
I mean, if you're looking for something similar but funny, watch Space Dandy.
Yes, and I have seen all of Space Dandy.
Yeah, but the episode is not about that show. We should do an episode on Space Dandy. It's great.
But in all seriousness, you've kind of alluded to it here, but what is your secret origin with the Cowboy Bebop series?
I got a similar thing, except I did start getting into anime in my first year of university, kind of. Technically in grade 11, 12 is when I started, but like I'd only watched like Naruto, Bleach, Dragon Ball Z, and like one or two really obscure-ish animes by the time I graduated from high school. Like Blood Plus and the original Hellsing, which at the time was really obscure. And then, similarly, I think, I was looking at like animes you should watch, and one of them was Cowboy Bebop, but I actually did not watch it online. I actually bought the DVDs. Like I said, it's one of the earliest DVDs I bought, and I watched it for the first time on DVD, and never regretted it. It was it was a really good series that kind of, I don't know, I guess came at a time where introspection was something I wanted or needed. And so I think it kind of resonated more strongly with me than a lot of other things I'd watched until then. It didn't hit me in the feels as hard as some other things, but I just really appreciated kind of the fact that it was something different. But also, I think mostly it is the first anime I watched that wasn't based on a manga.
Oh yes, that's a very important part of.
Yeah, and I think that was something that was really kind of obvious as I was watching it, and especially when I finished it, was like, oh yeah, no, this was set to accomplish this. It had a specific goal, it stuck to it, it did it, and then it's done. And I think that was also something that was impressive. It was like, oh yeah, you can do that too. You don't have to have, the One Piece treatment. And it is probably one of the shortest animes I had seen up until then, except I think, like there were a couple that I watched that were shorter, but they didn't really leave much of an impression on me. And then this one kind of did, and it was like, oh yeah, this is cool.
We should probably just throw a shout out. One Piece, its 1,000th episode is airing this week, or it has aired now.
Yeah, that's a thing. That's impressive. That's a milestone very few shows have gotten to.
Yeah.
And none with that degree of popularity. Like the other shows that have gotten that many episodes are things that are just like, I think it's the first actually like serialized, like in the sense of like series that has one kind of through storyline. Because I think all the other animes that have hit over 1,000 episodes are like either based on gag mangas or Case Closed. But Case Closed, I mean, there is technically a through line, but it is a series of short stories more than anything else, because it's a mystery series, which, as real TV has shown us, you can go on forever and ever as long as you have justification for people murdering or stealing.
So I quickly Googled TV shows that have had 1,000+ episodes, and General Hospital has been on since 1963. So as of 2017, it had 13,000 episodes.
I was thinking about just animation, because I guess probably something like Coronation Street might have 1,000 episodes, or like, because that's like, because like dramas probably can hit that cap because they just keep doing things.
I had no idea some of these soap operas have been around for so long.
Yeah, Coronation Street is something like there's one family in it that has 3 generations of actors that were in it. It's ridiculous.
So I'm finding a list of anime series by episode count. Saze-san has had over 7. It's still going on because it started in 1969. Has 7,500+ episodes.
Yeah, that's a gag.
Then there's one called Nintama Rantaro that has had 2,245 episodes. Then there's Ojarumaru, Oyako Club, and Doraemon. Holy moly.
3 of those I recognize, and they are, like I said, they're just like, I mean, it's not bad, but they are basically like gag episodes. So like, it's like not even sitcomish. It's like kind of like Teen Titans Go levels, where like the universe may or may not reset after every episode.
Crayon Shin-chan, that's another one of those, isn't it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then Case closes at 1,027 episodes. So, or Detective Conan for those people who don't know it as Case Closed.
So One Piece is gonna beat it. That's pretty impressive. Because Case Closed has been kind of like not the golden standard, but like the big longest running anime for a while now. Like, because I feel like most of the other ones just aren't counted as in the same way.
Anyway, we got off track there, but back to Cowboy Bebop. It's a series that means something to you, and you brought up the fact that it is anime original. It's not based on a source material, which is rare for the anime industry. So that probably helped it stand out, but it also, as you've pointed out, is a very well-known show for many reasons. And the fact that it's English dub is, by that point in the late 90s, English dubs were just starting to become a thing, and they didn't necessarily all have the greatest greatest rep, I guess you would say. But it was perceived as one of the good ones that didn't butch the source material or turn eggs into ice cream or cigarettes into lollipops.
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing, is that I feel like Cowboy Bebop was never mistaken for a kid's show.
4 cowboys, 4 bounty hunters, 4 hearts, 4 notes. Following a dusty trail of money, sin, and desperation. Living day to day, dreaming hour by hour. 4 beats, 4 parts of a movement. Mars to Venus, Callisto to Ganymede. Bounty to bounty, and outlaw to outlaw. 1 ship, 1 crew, 1 destiny. Cowboy Bebop.
Like One Piece or Shaman King or Pokemon to some degree, or Yu-Gi-Oh! I mean, the Yu-Gi-Oh! TV show is kind of child-friendly-ish in Japan, but like the manga definitely wasn't. And I think but I think it's like, it is, the themes and events are so very blatantly aimed at an older audience that you can't really look at that in any way, shape, or form and say, yeah, that's for kids.
Well, I mean, like, okay, I've been rewatching Gundam Wing recently out of nostalgia, and on Funimation they have the original English dub from the early 2000s. And to be frank, I like a lot of those voice actors, but this is not their best performance, and they've like clearly got a lot of voice doubling going on, where like one actor is playing several parts that all like they don't even sound that different. And you just see, oh yeah, this is what anime dubbing was like in the late 90s, early 2000s. The small casts, not a lot of effort put into the voice lines. Like the performances are pretty wooden in parts. So Cowboy Bebop stands out because it was one of the first anime dubs that I know of that was produced in LA and not remotely from somewhere else. But also, you can put that in front of somebody and they wouldn't cringe at the quality of the performances.
Yeah, and it does also, I'm not sure who do you. Well, I guess it was Funimation who licensed it originally, or
It
was
wasn't. No, they've picked up the license in recent
okay?
years.
Because I know that was one of the things is that like most of the like Toonami and 4Kids, which were the two main companies that did it, kind of kept the same voice actors as well. So you got a lot of like you could recognize, and I think like I remember distinctly one of the things that actually disturbed me the most about watching the 4Kids dub of One Piece was that Zoro was voiced by the same guy who voiced James from Team Rocket and Pokemon, and I just never got over that because the characters are so very different, and it just took me out every time I heard him.
I mean, I've met that actor. He also played Kaiba.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's not that he's a bad voice actor, but like there wasn't enough voice differentiation between those two characters, and there really should be.
I've also heard people say of Cowboy Bebop that it was one of the most American-friendly anime shows to release because it was basically just a straight-up sci-fi.
I mean, it's a sci-fi space western. It's a better version of Firefly. Like, it's. I will stick to that opinion forever. By the way,
Do you think there's credibility to that claim? Because Cowboy Bebop did air a few years before Firefly. Like, what are is it just a coincidence that they're both sci-fi westerns?
I highly doubt that. Joss Whedon seems like a guy who is aware of things enough to have taken inspiration from probably that and possibly even Trigun too. So, which is a weird thing but it makes sense to a certain degree. Like the idea of like having a Wild West theme in space does actually make a fair amount of sense because it was a time of quick expansion where you couldn't always necessarily apply the law in the same way everywhere. That's kind of where the mythos of the Wild West comes from. And so having a space age have those similar themes does make a certain amount of sense.
Yeah. So it kind of like it hit with the right crowd in the early 2000s when it was released on TV. It aired on on Toonami, which was like the famous programming block that allowed for anime to air in American television. And it's sort of gone on to be, I would say, definitely like there's like I would almost say like there's a subgenre of introspective sci-fi adventure series that Cowboy Bebop kind of laid the foundation for.
Yeah, and lay the foundation for also spoofs. Like we talk about Space Dandy, there's definitely a strong resemblance between Dandy and Spike in certain aspects, not all of them obviously, but like it's clear that it was very influential.
And if I recall, it's the same director from Cowboy Bebop that did Space Dandy.
I think so as well. Yeah. So it's but even without that, it's kind of like been good at influencing and also like having people take a risk on stories that are a little more serious and a little less, not necessarily for kids, but for younger audiences. It skews higher than most shonen anime for sure.
Is it shonen? Does it count as shonen? Doesn't it slip into the older seinen demographic?
Oh no, it definitely is, but that's what I mean. Like it skews older than like most anime that has hit that level of fame.
Anywho, Cowboy Bebop, the anime version. It's only 26 episodes, and then there's also a movie that I can't remember if it's like a sequel to the series or if it's meant to be like a side story.
It's a side story. I used to know between which episode. It happens specifically between two episodes. It's pretty good. If you can check it out. I also have it on DVD.
Yeah, so at the time of our recording here, it's available for streaming on Netflix and Funimation. So if you are interested in what we're talking about here with the live action series and you're like, maybe I would prefer this in the original form, go check out the anime. But before we start talking about the live action series, I feel like we should probably touch on this topic of live action anime adaptations. Because like video game movies, there have been several attempts to take an anime manga product and translate into a live action film. Both like people in Japan have done this, but then also it's happened over here in the West a couple times. And it is kind of head scratching that people keep trying to do this because it's never, at least for me, it's never seemed to have worked.
I will say that I believe the live action. Some of the live action Death Note movies worked, and more
Not the one
recent.
Netflix made.
Hmm?
Not the one.
No, not the Netflix one. The ones that were made. So the few attempts that have worked have come out of Japan, and they are few and far between. But yeah, the Death Note movies that were made in Japan, the Rurouni Kenshin trilogy was actually really good, which I think is also on Funimation. It should be, but like, yeah, generally speaking, it can be like it either becomes too cartoonish, which is why I have massive fears for the live action adaptation of One Piece, where it just looks completely stupid, or it just misses the point. But I feel like, again, there's a difference between like the American ones tend to just miss the point of what made the series good, especially things like Dragon Ball Evolution, like that was nothing. And then the ones in Japan are kind of a little truer and a little closer, but also just like are trying to bring to life animation, which is always a very hard thing to do, and they don't always do it in the best of ways.
Now, I have my reasons for why I don't think these work, but what's your like, here's why these never work?
Okay. First off, usually animes are serialized and you're trying to make a TV series into a movie, which seldom works in any context. Second, animation is much, much faster paced than live action can ever be. And so you either make things uncanny by trying to accomplish the same style of movements, or it just looks bad, or it takes way too long. And I mean, and those are kind of general, like when you're going a TV show into a movie or animation into live action. But I think that even further than that, anime is harder because it is very, for most of them, like it's worse. The limitation on animation to live action are worse because anime tends to be a lot more fluid, and a lot harder. And I also think that there is a big cultural difference between Japan and the US that makes it so that a lot of animes just would not work well in the United States, which I think, or like in a Western kind of environment. Maybe now that, anime is cool again or has become cool, people might look at it, but I think those are the main problems. Also, just this beams and ki blasts are really hard to do visual effects for in live action that don't look stupid. And that's a barrier for a lot of like the popular shonen fight animes, is that like, how do you animate solid beams of light that change the color of the screen with CG?
Yeah, I think for me the biggest barrier, yeah, everything you've said is true, but anime have such unique and stylized character designs that the second you try and even put the extravagant costumes onto a real person, it just all of a sudden doesn't look right.
Oh yeah, that is also a very big concern again for the live action One Piece anime, because like Ichiro Oda does not cut slack on character design. But I think that's also one of the things that worked to the advantage of Cowboy Bebop. Most of the characters are human. All the characters are no. I mean, there's a dog, but like mostly the characters are human, and they're not like outrageously ridiculous. Ed would be probably the most distinctive character design in the show. And even that, it's just a teenage girl who's really skinny and flexible, which isn't that hard to do either.
So it's kind of funny, I guess, because anime is popular, that people are just continually trying to make this a thing. Because yes, there was the Dragon Ball Evolution movie, which failed on so many levels. Then there was the Speed Racer movie, or that was before that, but that also failed. And then there was the Netflix
I feel like
produced.
Speed Racer at least was trying to be stupid, so it was better. Like it was trying to be ridiculous, so it wasn't as much of a flop.
And then the Ghost in the Shell movie with Scarlett Johansson came out, and I remember enjoying it, but I'm like, this is still, despite their best intentions, this is still a pale comparison to the original.
Yeah, that one, I think was more the fault of the. I mean, okay, I don't want to say the director because I don't know if they're directly to blame, but like, it's more the fault of the production rather than some of the limitation we talked about, because actually the scenes that were animated to be more or less exactly the same actually worked. You know, they did look stunningly like the original scenes, but it was just the thematic depth of the original movie just wasn't in there. Because I feel like that was one, like Cowboy Bebop, that had a lot of good things going for it to make it an easier adaptation, but it just didn't work.
Yeah, and there's this stuff isn't slowing down. As you point out, Netflix is making a live action One Piece series. I've heard rumors of a live action Akira movie. I've heard about a live action Your Name movie. It just doesn't. I mean, something like Your
I mean,
Name.
Akira and Your Name are less ridiculous, although, like, I think Akira's going to hit that point where, like, it was the same thing as Lion King. Is like, well, if half of your movie's going to have to be CG anyways, why are you doing it live action?
And I think, I mean, this is a problem for Cowboy Bebop and for Akira, is that when those came out originally, they were so influential to science fiction around the world that you're going to have people see this now and they're going to be like, this is like blah, blah, blah. This is like The Expanse, or this is like this other sci-fi thing, when it's like, no, like if you do your math and go back, you'll find out that whatever you're into is actually ripping off this.
But again, I think like because Cowboy Bebop was simple enough, like other than some of the like design elements, I don't think it'll be too much of a problem.
Hopefully.
And I think also because it did kind of lean into the Western thing, so it is borrowing elements from other Westerns rather than like setting the ground for a lot of those tropes, I think.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
I guess I'm like thinking of like, even like My Hero Academia. We talked about that series recently. That, in terms of like the world and the setting, could very easily be turned into like a Netflix series or whatever, an American movie. But the problem is that, like, you know, the series has so much story. It's like like a feature length film would be just scratching the surface of getting into the story. And it's not like, you know, we don't have like the movie series like Bond that has gone on for like 25 entries. It's not really a continuous story. Every movie, I mean, there's usually some callbacks, but usually most movies are their own individual thing. And to do all those superpowers would be very expensive.
And I feel like if it was made, it would feel a little bit like a cash grab at this point. Like, it is still, like, I don't doubt that My Hero Academia will keep being popular, but right now it's kind of just topical. And that's one of the things that the anime industry has done in the past and is kind of moving away from a little bit, but is just like picking up something that's popular, making an anime adaptation, then dropping it if it doesn't do well in the ratings, which, you know, has seen the death of many series that I think deserve better, but just never hit the ratings they needed. And so weren't able to do that. Weren't able to get that kind of long-term adaptation, but you don't really do that here. Like, when you make a series, it's usually, except, well, that's the way it was, but I feel like now with like Netflix and streaming services, they are making more, like a way more content more quickly, which might end up hitting that same problem where you'll get a bunch of like live action anime adaptations that are going to last one season.
Yeah, so this live action Cowboy Bebop series was announced a few years ago. And at the time, I was thinking, well, that's definitely one of the ones that would be easier to do as a live action series. And then they announced the casting that John Cho was going to be playing Cowboy Bebop, or sorry, Spike Spiegel, the main character. I realized Cowboy Bebop is not the name of the main character. Don't get mad at me. And that
it's just because you brought it up. It's literally the same as Firefly. The show is named after the ship, actually after the type of ship.
Yeah, and then they announced that Mustafa Shakir was going to be playing Jet, and that Daniela Pineda was going to be playing Faye. And I looked at those three, and I'm like, okay, Jet's not African of origin in the show, but I don't think that matters to his character. Spike Spiegel, he's an anime character, so it's kind of hard to tell what his whatever his ethnicity is meant to be. But I was willing to give it a shot. I'm like, sure, let's see what these actors can do. I think the piece of news about the series that gave me the most hope is that they did actually recruit Yoko Kanno to come back and do the music.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was also for me. It was like, yeah, no, because that the soundtrack to Cowboy Bebop is iconic, and it is like Death Note. It's not the be all and end all of the show, but it is definitely one of the things you talk about when you talk about the show. Is like, yeah, it also has a great soundtrack.
Well, and even the opening for Cowboy Bebop, it's like a jazz song, and there's hardly any lyrics in it, which is very odd for an anime show. Usually, you don't like jazz is an underused, I would say, style of music in anime.
Yeah, I think. Wait, the only words are.
Three,
all right,
two,
everybody, let's
one.
go. It's time to get all the people and the things together. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Let's jam.
Let's jam. That's it.
So, and they've like recreate like before the series premiered, Netflix put out their opening credits for this live action Cowboy Bebop, and it's more or less an exact recreation of the opening from the anime. So it almost fits into that weird uncanny valley though, because you're like, okay, this is pretty much the same, except there's these tiny things that make it different. I don't know how to. It's a weird. I don't know how to feel because on one hand, like it's so cool that they're trying so hard to be as close as possible to the original, but at the same time, it's like, but you can't be that. It just won't. The way that the fluidity of the hand movements or the foot movements in animation don't work the same in live action.
Although, like, Spike's animation was based on real martial arts, so you probably could kind of get it done. But again, you'd have to do some really serious work specifically on the choreography, which, which can be very difficult and is the kind of thing that works better if you're making a movie than a TV show. Because for the movie, you can get the actor to do like a severe amount of training and practice different things, and then kind of master the style and then cheat a little bit with special effects. But for a TV show, it's a lot harder to kind of get that flow going. Because I feel like other than Spike, you can get most of the flow of the other characters pretty easily. Because, like, I don't know, Jet just punches things hard with a bionic arm. Like, he's not as subtle, and, like, even Faye isn't subtle in any way, shape, or form. So, it's kind of... Sorry. But, it would be nice to see something like that work visually, but I don't know. I obviously, you're the one who's seen it. You can tell me if they got a little too bogged down on trying to reproduce the visuals, but I think it's not completely impossible.
Well, before we go any farther, give us a Blu-ray case description of Cowboy Bebop.
There's got to be something better, Jet. Come on.
My daughter's turning 8. And I can't afford to buy her a present because of you. I can afford a goddamn walking Sally doll, which is apparently all the goddamn rage in little girls' toys because of you. Now, this is my ship. And as long as you're on it, we're gonna go after the bounties I say we go after.
Do you feel better?
Yeah.
Space. The final frontier. These are the voyages of the spaceship Bebop. One guy who's an ex-cop and turned bounty hunter. One guy who's an ex-mafioso turned bounty hunter. And then eventually there's a dog, a teenage genius hacker, and a woman who more or less joins. And then stuff happens in space, but also the Wild West. And the great music.
So before the series premiered, Daniela Pineda went to social media because she was getting criticism from fans for not looking like Faye Valentine. And if you've seen the anime, I mean, she's kind of the stereotypical anime female lead. Like,
she's like the original Boobosaurus.
Yeah, like huge boobs, huge hips, like the kind of unrealistic body type that would be impossible for a real woman to perform. And she made a joke that like, oh yeah, like I wanted to like look like the character, but it would involve like reconstructive surgery to make me into a person who doesn't exist. And that's kind of like the skeezy side of the fandom, is that admittedly watching the original Cowboy Bebop, like, they're anime characters, and especially with Faye Valentine, she doesn't look like a real person. And so Daniela is a real person. So I felt bad that she even had to go that far to, making a statement about how she doesn't look like the character.
I feel that's weird because I feel like that should have been much more of a problem for Daniel Cho. Like,
You mean John Cho?
John Cho, sorry. Yeah, because he doesn't look like Spike at all. Like, he doesn't have the same physique. He's not as tall. He's not as skinny. He doesn't have the same face shape at all. Like, I feel like he is further away from the character who is like the main character. So if you were going to complain about looks, like, I'm not complaining about it, but that is the way I would be complaining if I was complaining about like somebody not looking the part.
Yeah, I mean, his hair looks good. He definitely. I mean, Spike Spiegel has one of these like weird, crazy heads of anime hair.
I mean, it does, but it also looks weird on John Cho just a little bit.
You get used to it.
Okay, I'll take your word for it.
Now, I will say, like, this show has not had the best response. People have kind of criticized various aspects of it, and from the episodes I've seen, I can kind of see the criticism. Like, people will criticize the writing of the show, they'll criticize the editing. From what I've seen so far, I've been entertained by it. There's 10 episodes in total, and like I said, I've seen about 2.5. I was partway through the third before I had to run off to an event at my church, so I couldn't exactly miss that. And then I've been busy putting up Christmas decorations this weekend, so my priorities weren't in the right place. All to say,
podcast should always be the priority.
Yes. Something that did cause a bit of hope when I started watching it is they mentioned that the show was developed by a man named Christopher Yost, who I have been familiar with for a long time. And I was like, okay, well, if he's involved, then it should be good. But I'm sure, Beeper, you and the rest of our listeners are wondering who that man is.
Absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to give you a list of things that he's helped write. The Mandalorian, X-Men Evolution, The Batman, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2003, Wolverine and the X-Men. He was the head writer on the Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes show that I speak highly of, that got canceled because of Disney. He wrote some episodes for Star Wars Rebels. He wrote Thor the Dark World, which I know is like criticized as like the worst MCU movie. But he also wrote Thor Ragnarok, which people like. So
okay, yeah. So one swing and a miss out of a pretty good portfolio, I think, is excusable.
He also wrote the animated movie Hulk Versus, and I found this one on DVD when it came out, and I really liked it because it's two short films, one where Hulk fights Wolverine, and one where Hulk fights Thor. And they're both well-written stories, and it makes sense as to why he would have been tapped to be involved in the MCU.
It's not just, oh yeah, we need these two characters to fight, let's make up something to make them fight, and then Martha, and then they stop fighting.
Yeah, I mean, it was like the Thor one involves Loki basically like taking over the Hulk's body so that he can beat up Thor, essentially.
That is probably the best motivation ever.
So all that to say, he has obviously a large filmography with superhero shows, but obviously not with anime. And I'll say they've done their best to try and make things as similar to the original series as possible. But one major difference that I've observed so far is that they're pretty much from the hop getting into describing his history with the Syndicate.
That's interesting. Like, I could see that being, like, again, if you made a movie, I could see that being something that you would definitely want to do. But with a TV show, you can take your time. You can just meet Spike for who he is. And I feel like it's a bit of a disservice to not kind of get to know him before you get to know his past. Because it's the kind of thing where, like, his past informs who he is as a person, but you don't need to know it.
Well, that's been so interesting because I didn't get to the point in the anime where they get into his backstory. He just comes across as this mysterious guy who has all these, abilities, and you're like, who is this guy? And you never know. But literally within the first episode, they establish a connection to his past, and that you even see like flashbacks to things from his past. And
Wait, do you see his rival in the flashbacks in the first?
yes, but Vicious also is like they actually show Vicious in present day, like in the first couple episodes as well.
I think that's a huge mistake, personally, just for the tone, but also like you said, it's I don't know. There's a very similar thing that happens in like Trigun, where you meet the main character and you have no idea about his past, and he's really intense and has all these weird pseudo superpowers that nobody else seems to be able to touch him, but you don't know why, and you learn it towards the end, but you've already gotten to know him and to love him before that happens, and it just kind of like adds an extra layer.
Yeah, like a big conflict in these first couple episodes I've seen is that Spike is being confronted with the reality. It's like, oh, the Syndicate knows he's alive, and he has to decide if he's going to tell Jet or not about the fact that he is was part of this thing. And for somebody who hadn't gotten to that point in the anime, like, oh, I guess this is what like this is the story I didn't get in watching the rest of the anime.
Not exactly, actually. No, because that's again the dynamic between Spike and Jet in the anime is pretty strongly they don't know each other's past and they don't care. So I feel like again I think you probably have a better idea than I do about that, but the one thing I felt, because you or somebody else sent me like the trailer, and the thing I remember was that the back and forth was too quippy and not really what it was between them. Like, weirdly, Spike both was too emotional and not emotionless enough. Too emotional and too emotionless at the same time. Like, it seemed like they were trying to portray the characters but just weren't quite there, and I feel like that's kind of part of it, is like you do have like Spike being very nonchalant about certain things, but then I don't feel like, and they do argue a lot about food and but it's more because they don't have any money in the anime, not because Spike loves food or anything. And I think that kind of it felt a little jarring and a little off-putting that they kind of put the emphasis in weird places and tried to make it so that these characters feel more like friends than they should.
That I mean, and again, I've only seen the first 2.5 episodes, but that dynamic of their back and forth, it's there, and they do argue about food. But unfortunately for John Cho, I think he's doing a serviceable job, but at least the way, again, I've only seen Cowboy Bebop, the anime with the English dub, but the way Steve Bloom portrays the character, even though he's kind of a jerk, he just sounds so cool and so like as if he's got like no cares in the world, that he's very endearing, even though what he's saying is kind of like, yeah, you're kind of a jerk.
Yeah, and I think that's, again, and that's a bit worrisome, because if you're not capturing the characters of Cowboy Bebop, there isn't that much good to the show. Like, the stories are good and they make you reflect, but they are mostly character driven and motivation driven. Like, every episode ends the conflict because of the way either Spike or Jet is as a person, like, or the way they react to another character who has kind of a different point of view from them. There's a lot of that going on, and if you don't portray Spike as kind of not caring about anything, but still managing to be charismatic, you're kind of missing the point, and that's, I don't know. Again, obviously it's possible to do an adaptation that isn't 100% accurate, but if they're trying to go for an accurate adaptation and they're not kind of hitting the mark for the main characters, then, it might run into problems.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just John's delivery, but he just doesn't sound as charismatic. And so when he says very similar things to the animated Spike, I'm like, you're a jerk. Like, I'm not as won over by what you're saying.
I think, though, another thing, and again, this goes to adapting animation, you can make somebody say something with a facial expression that in no way, shape, or form matches what a normal human would say in animation. It's possible as an actor to do that, but it's a lot harder.
Yeah, that's a good point. I will say Mustafa, he's perfect as Jet. Like he almost, I mean, I'm like, wow, you even sound like the guy from the English dub. I was like, did you like, are you that guy? Like, and it's not just that he sounded like the character. His level of like frustration with Spike's antics and his like, I need to make money and blah blah blah, like all that.
But then eventually just giving up on it because he can't change it.
Yeah, he's perfect. And for Faye Valentine, for what I've seen of her, she certainly has the same, I guess, confidence, only it's less expressed through a femme fatale kind of, oh, I'm going to, try and win you over to get what I want. She's more like, I'm in charge. I've got the gun. I'm going to use the F word because I guess that's the thing we can do in this show. It still works, but it's not quite the same. And again, this is where it feels weird because like there's certainly things, especially with like the opening and the music, where you're very, very much trying to recreate the anime. But then there's other points like where they've really shifted Spike's the order of Spike's story. It's like, okay, you're also doing something different. And I guess for me, it's like it's one of these you can't have your cake and eat it too situations.
So are they also going into Faye's backstory really early? Because like you could go into Jet's backstory too, but like it's a pretty stereotypical cop gone off the force because something went wrong on a case. Like Spike Jet is the most boring character in a sense because he's more stereotypical. He's still a great character, but like it's less interesting what's happened to him.
Yeah, we haven't really learned anything about Faye. She's introduced because she's after a bounty that's related to a bounty that Jet and
right,
Spike are after.
Yeah, but you don't know why she's trying to get money and kind of her. Well, are we allowed to give spoilers?
I mean, at this point, it's like if you're still listening to this conversation, we can at least say spoilers for the Cowboy Bebop anime.
Yeah, spoilers for the Cowboy Bebop anime, potentially the live action show. Her kind of man out of time problem, as well as like, and here's the thing, I think that Cowboy Bebop did take other inspiration because her storyline is more or less exactly the same as Ripley in the second Aliens, right? Where she's been in cryogenic sleep for a really long time and owes a ton of money to a corporation that's kind of just holding it over her. Except she chooses a very different way of getting the money, but like that kind of, she's out of time and trying to adapt, but at the same time, and trying to not care about anybody because, well, she doesn't care about anybody because everybody she knew is long dead, but at the same time she's also trying to find her place in the world, and that's again an interesting character dynamic that I hope kind of works in the show because again that's the thing is like I don't remember if the rest of the Bebop crew ever learns about her backstory. Like I know the viewers do, but I'm pretty sure Spike and Jet only get like an inkling of what it is, not actually get the full thing. And I think that was part of, again, fully formed characters reacting to each other and to other ideologies that are fully formed, but not really changing one another. Like even in the episode where in the anime, the episode where the girls leave, it's kind of sad, but then they get over it pretty quickly because again, it's more about seeing how people who react a certain way will react to these events.
Oh, by the way, everyone, Jam Jam is here. She doesn't have much to say about the show, but she is part of this conversation. In case you're wondering who, that's not me making baby sounds. That is indeed a real baby.
That would be really impressive if you could make those kind of baby sounds. Yeah, you're not squeaky enough. I think your vocal cords have gone past the point where they can make those sounds.
So yeah, I've only seen 2.5 episodes. I know I keep saying that. I think that in terms of I enjoyed myself, the biggest change is that we know a whole lot more about Spike's story going into it, and it's been a through line throughout these episodes that he's aware that the syndicate knows he's alive, and he's debating if he should tell Jet. And where like we see Vicious and the blonde woman, who are supposed to be married, I guess. And I'm like, these are things I didn't see in the anime because I never got that far. So I'm like, this could be a perfect adaptation. Or, I mean, the fact that they're telling us these things at a different point is, as you were kind of alluding to, it might be for the show's detriment. But again, they're trying to do something different, which again, that falls into my cake problem.
All right, but the ultimate question here: do you want to keep watching it? And if you do, is it out of its own merit or to see how well it does compared to the original?
Well, I'm in this weird place where I haven't finished either. So I'm like, should I just continue with the live action and finish that and then go back and finish the anime? Because
is the live action supposed to have more than one season?
I don't know. I know that there's, all I know is that there's 10 episodes. So I don't know.
I think they're meant to be more than one season, which again goes into my problem that, you know, Netflix is basically doing what the anime industry has been doing and doing like 1 or 2 series of a show, then dropping it if it doesn't make the proper ratings. I know it's a terrible business model, boo-boo.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't dislike it. Like I would, yeah, I guess I should try to keep watching and just see how it goes.
Honestly, you know, it's a live action anime adaptation and you don't hate it, that's already pretty like it's a step in the right direction. You know? So maybe I would encourage people to see it then.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't even feel comfortable giving it a back cookie rating because I haven't really, again, experienced enough of it to discuss it further. But it's on Netflix, so if you're if our meanderings here have gotten you interested, you should go check it out.
If you want to reach the show, you can send us an email at
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
or you can tweet us at
The Bat Cookie Jar.
You can find the Bat Jar Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube, because we got a channel. Share our posts on Facebook, write reviews, give our shows a rating. This will help all people join us inside the Bat Jar, and we appreciate it dearly.
That is not a bat jar, that is a Christmas jar.
So now that we're getting closer to the Christmas season, the Bat Jar has been replaced with a more Christmas-oriented cookie jar.
I'm disappointed in you. I thought you would have started using the Christmas thing at the first Sunday of Advent.
Well, you know, it takes anyway. I try to get as much time out of my Christmas decor because I have a lot of it, and it takes a lot of time to decorate. So here we are. This week, the new He-Man series has its second, like the Kevin Smith made one, has its second half dropping on Netflix. So we could talk about that show because we haven't yet. Also, the first 2 episodes of Hawkeye come out, but we normally wait till the shows are done to talk about those. We still haven't really had, I mean, Ghostbusters came out this week. And also the new Disney movie Encanto comes out, so we could talk about that. Or we can just go into this Christmas jar.
I mean, I do eventually want to talk about the Ghostbuster, but I actually want to see that one, and I'm not sure I'll be able to accomplish that this week. So maybe go into the Bat Jar, the Christmas jar, because the other ones really don't interest me much.
Oh, that's so sad. Okay, here we go. I'm going in. Not looking. Okay, here's something. What does that say?
Who is Jason Wera Joe?
What? This must be like a joke one because I don't know what this means. Who is Jason? Where is Joe? Does that make any sense to you?
No, but I don't know. Here's what I propose we do. Who's a Jason? Where's a Joe? No, it's who is Jason? Where's a Joe?
Yeah.
Who is Jason? Where's a Joe? If you guys know what this is because you put it in the bat jar, then send us a message.
Well, you know what? Okay, you know what I realized this is? We had a barbecue at our house this summer, and I showed people the bat jar, and I saw some people slip things into the jar. I thought they were actually like real topics, but now I realize they were like gags.
Oh, okay. I was trying to plug the how to reach us thing, but you
Right.
know.
Oh. All right, here I go. I'm gonna try again. I really don't want another
So,
joke one.
You pull this one out, but if somebody sends us a message and there is a real reason for the who is Jason, where's a Joe, then we'll cover that. But somebody has to tell us what the meaning is, and it has to be in the purview of putting nerd and geek culture under the microscope.
Ah, dang it. Okay, there it is.
Oh, okay. So I just rewatched Fellowship and Two Towers this weekend, extended edition, with my 3-month-old daughter. So we're talking about the Lord of the Rings movie.
Ah, no.
Oh, come on! Look, they swept the Oscar. You have to talk about it at some point. It's big. It revived fantasy and created a bunch of terrible things afterward. It literally changed the face of New Zealand's economy forever.
All right, so yes, next week we're talking about the Lord of the Rings movies. Okay.
Yeah, we are.
All right. Well, until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I'm Beef Pork Ribs.
Catch you on the flip side.
Let's hunt some orcs.